Welcome back to Real with Rios, the Sueños to Success podcast, where we spotlight voices turning pain into power and purpose into policy. I'm your host, Dr. Victor Rios. Today's episode is personal. We're flipping the script. We're hearing my story through the eyes of someone I mentored back in the day when I was in college, someone who's now a respected community leader and elected school board member and a fierce advocate for justice. Please welcome my friend and sister in making a difference in community and in education, Corina Herrera-Loera. Welcome, Corina.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you. I mean, I feel like, so I was in college and when I met you, and then, I don't know, I didn't really have a conversation with you after that for maybe about at least 10 years. And then after that, maybe we ran into each other, and then another 10 years had gone by. And now we've reconnected. And the way that I kind of most recently had an opportunity to reconnect with you was just seeing posts on social media about the great work you've been doing out in the community, particularly leading in education. So I just want to thank you for the work you've done to champion for the rights of students that don't have a voice and for the rights of community members that are often left behind. And I want to talk about that today a little bit. But first, if you don't mind, let's hear a little bit about your journey coming up. I know that you have an incredible personal story yourself, and that by the time I met you, like I said, I was in college and I was part of a group that was going out into the community, tutoring and mentoring local high school students. And you happen to be one of those high school students. And I remember back then you had a powerful story, a powerful voice. And as college students, we were just trying to figure out, how do we support these students, number one, to go to college, and number two, to be leaders in their community, and number three, to continue seeking self-empowerment throughout their lifetime. And when you're in college, you're young, you got dreams, you might want to help people, but you don't know if what you're doing is really helping them. You're just trying. And that's what we were doing. We were trying. But prior to those high school days, tell us a little bit about your journey coming up, being a kid, and what was it like to come from a immigrant family? What was it like to sort of grow up and start to think about, like, what am I going to do in my future?
Mm-hmm. So I can't tell my story without starting from, where my parents met. Zacatecas, Mexico. That's where my roots are. And, my mom grew up in a home where she wanted to go and be an attorney, but my grandfather told her, no, the only way you're leaving this house is as a nun or married. So she chose to get married. Fast forward, had a family with my father. And then I was conceived in Mexico. Eventually, my mom and I, me in her womb with my fist held up high, crossed the border, as some would say illegally. But as an indigenous person, I know that we have traveled these continents up and down, for years. And it's a man-made border that we have there, right?
Break that down for me a little bit. So you're saying, there's a border, a man-made, artificial-made border, but indigenous peoples have always navigated the Americas, North, South, Central America, and in ways that, cultures are connected, language is connected, trades are connected, ideas. What is it about sort of where you come from that you feel a connection to then the lands that have been artificially divided, now known as the United States?
Yeah, so it's definitely my journey. So as, Zacatecana, right? Eventually in my 30s learning I am Wirarica, Huichol, putting the word to that. But always knowing that I'm connected to the earth, right? Where I was conceived, where I was born, and where I live.
And that's an indigenous population from Zacatecas.
Yes,
Okay.
the Wirarica Huichol. And so, later going to ceremonies and hear my tío Krober Galindo talking about Seattle, right? Seat. So se is one and is water. So
In what
the
language?
connections, so in the Nahuatl language,
Which comes from Central Mexico.
which comes from Central Mexico. And now as indigenous people, right, we all we have this umbrella as Mexica, I do Aztec dancing. And so we're gathering, right, kind of re-threading and re-braiding our indigenous by what we learn and who we are. So as indigenous people, I know because of the language that was left of, beating the beads, right? And our indigenous people would go up and down. We'd honor Mother Earth, and there was time to leave. We'd move. We'd go and trade. We'd come back to our communities. We'd bring back food. We'd bring back, goods. We'd bring back beads. We'd still do. So it's that we're still here. And for me, that root of knowing where I am and who I am, that has gotten stronger and stronger. I feel over time, like my spirit already knew, but my physical realm is kind of connecting with that. And it's like, de aquí soy, right? And as I said, even growing up now in San Jose, well, growing up, we're always growing up, but living and raising my family, having roots there also.
Yeah. So like in our times today, right, more than ever, people that resemble, whatever people think of, conceive as being Mexican, whether it's si estás hablando español or if you're a certain color or, if you're wearing certain clothing that looks whatever, they consider Mexican. Nowadays being told, go back to Mexico, go back to where you came from. But in your narrative, you're like, wait a minute, we never, we never came here. The borders came to us.
Right.
Or
De aquí soy. I'm from this
soy.
land.
Yeah,
This is the continent my people came up and down, right?
yeah.
For years, hundreds of years. And so going back in my journey, I grew up. So fast forward, we moved into Hayward, California. That's where my parents, found a home. I was born and raised in Hayward. And I grew up in a neighborhood with a lot of violence, a lot of gang violence, substance abuse. And so when I was 13, I remember being at my friend's funeral. He was shot and killed, and his body had been thrown over a creek.
Whoa.
And so I remember sitting at his funeral and seeing his mother crying at his coffin and thinking at 13, right, a mother should never have to cry and bury their child, especially over a color, a number.
This was gang
Gang-related, yes.
13-year-old boy?
I was 13. Yeah, he was 13 because we grew up going to school together, playing hide and go seek, tag. And so I remember telling myself, because I was sitting at the funeral and I was, seeing my friends. These are people that I wanted to hang out with. These are people that I played, hide and go seek, tag. We grew up together. And so, seeing the rags down the back pocket, the jerseys, talking about retaliation. And, I sat there and I remember thinking, our friend just died because of this. Why would we go do that? And at the same, that like that in Tlokenawake, that Ometeo, I understood why. Because that's what we grew up with. That's how we knew how to place our anger and do something about what was happening. Like, that's the only space we had to let out our frustration.
Will you break down Tlokenawake, Ometeo? Because you're bringing up these very powerful indigenous philosophies. And I know you apply them today to your world and retrospectively. But what do they mean?
So, Ometeo and Tlokenawake is like everything has the opposite. So, for example, day and night, light and darkness.
It's like yin yang almost.
Yin yang. So, I think of a lot of our people, right? And how we start adopting like horoscopes, which is great, right? I think it tells a story. And what are you? I'm Scorpio and I'm Pisces. And it means that. But we have our own ways, right? And so when we learn about our own ways, it's like, oh, yes.
Going back to your roots
bringing
is so
that
important.
back up. Like Cuauhtemoc once said, one day we will come back, right? Once upon a time, we had to put that away because our people were dying, and by the hundreds, right? And so they had to put those things away. But as Cuauhtemoc said, one of our leaders who was 19 and, they killed him, put everything away because we have too many people dying at the time. And one day our children's children will bring it back out. And so I know that I am part of that generation.
I feel like we come from, the indigenous peoples that we come from, they were always planning 7 generations ahead.
Mm-hmm.
That was the logic, right? Like whatever choice I make right now, how is it going to impact people 7 generations from now? My, my children's children, right? And we've lost a little bit of that, but in regaining some of that knowledge and philosophy and culture, we realized like, oh, they were talking about us.
That's
like
right.
They wanted us. They saw that we would be in positions to be able to have a privilege and opportunity to make change in the world. in a way that then once we recover that knowledge, we're able to, okay, we're here, we're seeking justice, we're here, we're seeking to look out for people who don't have a voice, we're here, we're seeking to make sure that all voices and cultures are represented.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And,
Um,
I truly believe, people like you and others like that have helped me um, have that voice and bring it back out because we each have our essence, right? I believe, again, creator and we weren't just made like a lamenton, right? Each of us have an essence. We're an answer to a prayer. And so creator has also placed those people around me, which includes, you
mm,
as my story to ensure that the essence that I brought to this earth was able to be uplifted. And so how am I doing it, right? How am I being a living ancestor now to those
wow. Yeah,
and to
because
the
all of
generations
us are
ahead?
like, the, or could potentially be the answers to our ancestors' prayers. And like you said, how are we living those answers out? Wow. So let's go back to that
Mhm.
powerful moment. One of your friends, he passes away. You grew up with him. He's 13. You're 13. You're at his funeral. You're watching his family suffer.
Mhm.
You're having a moment of reflection that now you're articulating as that balance of the universe and that really building community and empowering community not to have to suffer this way. But
Mhm.
you're only 13. So
That's
like,
right.
what do you tell yourself?
Well, I told myself I want to be either a probation officer. I just know I wanted a youth. I wanted to work with youth. I wanted to be around youth. And I remember at that time what I was exposed to was again, the violence and going to school, and this is how we lived. And then POs walking through the door, and my friends, and most of my friends I had POs were guys, and so I was like, oh, I want to be a PO. Like, wow, they don't even listen to their grandmas or moms like that. A PO has like I can tell they have influence, and so
These were POs coming around to like check on your
my
friends.
friends, that's right.
And that's the only time they behaved.
Oh yeah, they were like, oh, my PO's here, and it's like perfect. I was like, wow, like I've never seen anybody have that much, influence over you. And so I was told you'll never be a PO. It's too hard, right? All the excuses. And then I was like, well, if I can't be a PO, I was a like plan B and plan C person. I was like, I know I want to work with youth. I want to work with that population. So if I can't be a PO, then I'll be like a high school counselor. If not, maybe a Spanish teacher. Um,
So you had these ideas of wanting to have a career that would help you serve the community, whether it was the kids that were getting in trouble and giving them solutions, or whether it was teaching at a school.
yeah. Yes.
Wow.
So I just knew I wanted to work and have a positive influence and help youth come out of like the boxes that many youth just grow up and
So you get to high school.
I didn't know about college, by the way. Like I didn't know to be a PO I had to go to college. I didn't have that language in me.
Mm.
So anyways, I just knew I wanted to be that. Eventually I went to high school, again stopping fights and like weapons and hiding them and like I
So you were young, but like intervening,
intervening.
trying to get your friends not to
Yeah.
get in trouble, get killed.
Yeah.
Wow. Where do you get that from, you think?
So, my Mexican name is Siwachimali, woman
Mm.
warrior with a shield.
Wow.
And so,
Siwachimali.
Siwachimali. And each of us were born with it, again, essence, based on the second we were born. And so, knowing that, so my maestro Salokwa, based on the second we were born, he, looks through our Tonalama and brings it out. Again, like
Your
people talk
calendar.
about our calendar, people talk about the horoscope, like we have our own ways. And so when he knew me, but he didn't know me, like my mom knows me. And when he like broke it down, I was like, how does he know all this? It was just so amazing. So, anyways, my essence, woman warrior with the shield, like once I got that and understand, I'm like, everything makes so much sense.
So you were a little woman warrior with a
That's right.
shield at 13,
Protector of my people and
protecting them. Wow, that's giving me goosebumps. So now you're interpersonally just trying scrambling like, and at the time, let's just note that in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, like in LA and other places, it was literally a gang violence crisis in your community in Hayward, in my community
yeah.
in Oakland, in LA, all over. There was the peak, right, of of youth violence and unfortunately also young people being murdered was around this time, 1990s, early 2000s, and in all of America, that's when we peaked in terms of young people being murdered and young people committing murders. And we're coming up in this time, and you're in high school at the time, trying to prevent things, but it's almost like one firefighter trying to put out 1,000 flames.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, you started to connect with people that were going through your similar struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than being that one firefighter putting up all these flames, now all of a sudden you build a squad
Mm-hmm.
that's helping to put out these fires in our communities and bring peace,
Mm-hmm.
right, and tranquility. How did you start to meet people like you that wanted to make change in the community?
So I remember being a high school student and starting to feel like these teachers don't look like me, aren't teaching me the things that, are about me. And then eventually, I know that's when I met you and others. Um, and, went through the tutoring and mentoring. You also brought the culture. I remember that being exposed. And, also at the time, I was able to have my first job was with Hijos del Sol. Again, the culture and
That's a
knowing
nonprofit.
Hijos del Sol is through the La Familia Counseling Center in Hayward. That was my first job. And I didn't make
What,
much money, but I was a peer leader. And for me, it was like a big deal.
what did you do as a peer leader?
So as a peer leader, we would hold circles in the neighboring junior highs. So I held a group with younger girls talking about life skills, relationships.
So you were mentoring
I was
at a young
mentoring.
age. You were mentoring others because this nonprofit hired you to like do that kind of work.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were college students right above the hill because I went to Cal State East Bay, Cal State Hayward,
Time.
and we were part of a group, Mecha Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano de Aslan, and it was a affinity group that was trying to empower Chicano Latino communities.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, hey, let's go tutor the homies at the local high schools. And then we showed up. And there was a lot of gang violence in those high schools at the
Yes.
time, I remember. And that's when we met the student leaders, and you were one of those student leaders.
And I didn't see myself as one, right? But I saw you all coming and I'm like, what? Like, I saw you all almost like eventually as like older brothers that I didn't have. I'm the oldest in my family of three. And, most of the guys that I was around weren't talking about college. None of us, nobody in my circles were talking about college. And I was like, college? So you all helped me even like expand my brain in like, oh, what is college? I had no idea. Again, first generation, right? And then eventually, the anger, the frustration that I talk about, as youngers and the things we went through, violence in our community, violence in our homes, substance abuse, how it had impacted our families and our communities. That anger, it's like, wow, we can do something about it. Plus, at the time, I remember Proposition 209, Proposition 187, Proposition 21. Again, focusing on my community, right? You're going to lock up my brothers? And, it's like, no way. And then you all brought like kind of this stage and like, wow, we can do something about this, grab a mic. I remember coordinating rallies. And for the first time, my mom's like, ever since you grabbed a mic, your voice, you never stopped. I was like, yeah, bringing a mic to a youth to say you have a voice too, and the power that has.
Yeah, we were young, I was 19, 20. And I remember thinking, like, yeah, I'm 19, 20, but there's 16, 17-year-olds that they got to learn how to use their voice. And I remember being like, I'm not going to go and be the center of attention at a rally organizing against hate against immigrants. Because let's just face it, like right now in our country, we're seeing a lot of hate towards immigrant populations, but that's always been the case.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we go in waves. And at the time, there was a lot of hate towards immigrants. You mentioned Proposition 187. That was a law passed in California that really was trying to take a lot of rights and criminalize immigrant populations, and y'all weren't having it,
Mm-mm.
And so as high school students, y'all were. I remember we would show up and you all were upset and like we want to do something, and we're kind of just like following your lead. Okay, what do y'all want to do? We want to protest. Okay, where you want to go? We don't know, but we want to, And before you know it, y'all just started to organize yourselves. And we're thinking like, oh, they're gonna get in trouble. We're trying to get them to college. They're not gonna get into college because but we gotta follow their voice. And I remember it culminated a few times, but this one time where you and other leaders your age led these walkouts from the high schools.
Mm-hmm.
You recollect how you got to that point where you guys like, we're just leaving school.
Absolutely. And again, the Hijos del Sol, right? We had leaders from the different high schools hired. I can't help but to bring up Agustin Arteaga, who again made us believe like you can make anything happen. And again, adults, you were barely, like thinking back, you were barely an adult, but you were helping us believe like we can make this happen, and we're going to walk to the Hayward Unified School District, and we're going to pull out the superintendent, and we're going to hand him a list of demands, right? And so we had high schools from all over Hayward, plus others joined us, thousands of us. We blocked, the freeway. We closed down the freeway. We walked
This
through
was
the
the
freeway.
880 freeway, right?
It
What?
was 880 and the 92, I think, is like the
That
intersection.
intersection.
So now as an adult, as a board member, I'm like, oh, I could have just gone to a board meeting and demanded these. But hey, like we went to the superintendent, pulled them out and said, this is what we want at the schools. And part of it was Puente in the high schools.
And Puente, just so everyone knows, is a very important mentoring program for. You mentioned you didn't know about college. I definitely didn't know about college growing up and even in high school. And Puente teaches young people about college if they happen to be first generation in their family.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh, we're going to teach you about it and we're going to help you apply.
Mm-hmm.
So y'all just wanted some basic, like, can you help us get ready for college?
Mentors that look like us, teachers that look like us, also curriculum that were reflected in. And so I never got to participate in Puente because I was already like my sophomore or junior year in high school. It was eventually implemented. So now it's been there and thousands of students have.
Is it still there?
It's still there.
Wow.
And my brother and my sister, my younger brother and my sister were able to go through it. And so for me, again, it's that living ancestor that I didn't even know I was then, right? But ensuring that we spoke up and continue to speak up when there's something that's missing that our community needs.
I mean, let's just sit back and think about this. Y'all were, you know, 15, 16, 17-year-olds that were fighting for your community. And y'all were able to gain a lot in that community.
Mm-hmm.
Your voices were heard. Local laws were changed. Policies. The superintendent listened and was impressed with you all. And at the time, right, there wasn't a lot of diversity in terms of teachers in those schools. Now those schools are very diverse. So how does it feel to know that like at such a young age you were able to make that kind of impact?
Great. But, I've always been the hard worker. Like my dad always taught us ethics, right? You show up a half hour earlier and you make sure you leave it work better than you left it.
Mm-hmm.
And also the responsibility, like I feel good about it. And I know that I have a responsibility to leave the world different than where I'm at in a positive. How do I have a positive impact? My dad worked the fields through Coachella Valley down, Sacramento. And I think of the times that he worked the watermelon season. He just told me, I never went with him. So I'm not, I can only
So he was a
imagine in
migrant-
120 weather degree.
Migrant farm worker.
Migrant farm worker. So to know that he worked so hard and, I get to be here and make the world a better place is just, it's that responsibility. And also just amazing to be able to say, I did something, right? With the esfuerzo, with the sacrifices. My mom left her family in Mexico and was here alone. I can't imagine being a mom, alone without having my mom. Like, what do I do? Yeah.
Well, that's powerful. I mean, the hard work ethic and the resilience that our parents teach us, and it doesn't come without a struggle and a sacrifice. We have a beautiful, resilient culture, and we got to celebrate that and bring that in. But we also got to make changes in how we treat people in our community, whether it's how we treat women, or how we treat other groups. There's, for instance, a lot of anti-blackness in Latino culture. Um, so we have a lot of work to do as a community, and also we have so much beauty in our culture. And once you, as in your case, reconnect with your indigenous roots, you
Hmm.
start to find more solutions for being inclusive,
Hmm.
for bringing in the entire community. Um, and that's a beautiful thing. You talk about some of the struggles, whether it was in your neighborhood or at home, seeing things that maybe, like, as a young person, you're like, uh-oh, I'm a little traumatized by this. Uh-oh, like, I wish there wasn't this happening in my life right now. Um, how was being part of a movement? How did that allow you to, like, not just like try to help, like you were trying to literally take knives from people, and at the time guns too. I remember there was a lot of guns around.
Hmm.
I remember being at that protest that you all organized, and our job was to um, monitor safety.
Hmm.
And I remember a couple of the guys wearing all red, and then at the time it was very red and blue,
Hmm.
and a couple of the guys wearing all blue, having guns on them. And I remember, I wouldn't do it today, I'll tell you right now. But I remember me and my college homies, we're from the hood, but we're college homies. We just went and talked these guys into putting their guns away. And then, I don't know if you remember this, but it culminated with us getting on stage with a bunch of homies, and they tied a red bandana to a blue bandana to a red bandana to a blue bandana, and it was like 50 bandanas. And then we got them all to stand on stage and hold them up, like unity, like the hood is uniting
Hmm.
today in honor of this large movement that's bigger than all of us.
Yes. And that, I think of my friend who died and so many others. Um, and it's that, like, not dying in vain, right? What are we
Mm.
going to, again, Ometeo, like, darkness also can bring light and healing, as you talked about. And so it's stories like that. And every time now, I've been a probation officer now for 19 years. Uh, the hundreds of youth I've been able to sit with one on one. That spirit, right? Because I believe in spirit, of my friends. And again, not dying in vain. I have that moment, whether it's in juvenile hall when they commit that crime. We all make mistakes. All of us. There's nobody that's perfect. And I just remind them, I'm here to support you to get back on track. Right.
Mm.
And knowing I've been there, done that, it also helps me be, again, the resilience of the negative experiences that make me a better PO now, right? A
Mm.
better leader in my community.
Mm.
I'm connected. I know where the youth are at. I've been there, done that. And so how can I be a better servant and help them know that there's more? Kind of like you did, to me and the youth that I grew up with, like, what, there's college? What does that even, and you helped us be toured, right? Quote unquote. I wasn't a part of a fancy program like Upward Bound or any of these, but I had leaders like you that helped me be exposed, Mecha statewide, right? I didn't have a formal tour, but I would go to these different universities and colleges. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had that experience if it wasn't for those Mecha statewide or things like that.
And that's just Mecha again. It's that Chicana student movement that has its conferences and invites high school students. And I remember we would hit you all up at the high school and be like, "Hey, we're going to this conference. Y'all want to go? Okay." Do you remember you asked me the other day, which I totally forgot. You asked me about a green colored big van I used to roll up in to take people on field trips to.
Mhm.
What do you remember about that,
I
man?
remember a Tic Tac mint green, and I don't know. I mean, that's what I remember, the color. And I remember you picking us up, a group of, I don't know, 15 high schoolers, jumped in the van. We went to a sunrise ceremony in Alcatraz. That was my first time there. And
Wow.
I remember, you talk about getting the chills, like being there, getting the chills, and like my DNA reawakening, right? And saying, one day I'll do danza here. Like I told myself that. And then eventually, full circle, doing that, right? And when you talk about like the substance use, you know, I'm going to just name it machismo, right? And unfortunately, our cultures, violence, it's really the colonizer's way that came, right? That came. And to have moments like that you exposed us to bring us back to who we are, like, and our DNA be reawakened and like remembering, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's that putting together, like just coming together and like that soy, right? This is my home.
Mm-hmm. Remembering. And remembering, if you think about the word remember, let's think of the opposite. That's to dismember,
Mm-hmm.
to take apart, to chop apart. Dismember a body, you chop it apart. And that's what colonization did to our people. We got chopped apart. Our culture, our language, our knowledge of self, our history, we got chopped apart. And being chopped apart is traumatic. That's
So
why
if you
I'm
think
using,
about it, that's what's happening right now for those that want to be in power are trying to chop us up,
with separating families.
separating families.
Little babies, literally babies, 5-year-olds, 7-year-olds walking on the sidewalk with their mama, and the mama gets snatched up, thrown in kidnapped in some van, sent wherever, and then that little 5 to 7-year-old is going to live with that trauma the rest of their life. And so when we're dismembered,
Mm-hmm.
the number one thing for us to do is to remember. And that remembering is to patch ourselves back together as community. And being there as a community to support that 5-year-old, that 7-year-old that just went through that trauma. And I feel like that remembering, we have different ways of doing that. And one way to remember is to reconnect to our traditions, our origins, where we come from. Not so we could divide with others. It's like, oh, I got this and you don't. It's, I know where I come from. I know my stability. And now let me help you figure out where you come from, your stability, and let's join forces and figure out how we can make this world a better place.
That's right. Yeah.
So let's go back to high school, Corina, you're, discovering your power, your voice. Now that you're a policymaker, a school board member, a mother of 5, um, a, a professional, you got 3 college degrees plus a master's degree. That's crazy. We need to talk about that in a minute. Crazy, amazing. What would you tell little Corina if you could go back in time and whisper in her ear?
I would tell her that all the pain, because I'm thinking of myself at that age, what I'm going through, that all that would help me be the best, leader my community needs in the moment. Those that I would touch and be around, that all of that would help me. And that eventually I would meet my husband, who I get to create this work, co-create together and like uplift this work kind of double. And then have children, beautiful children that I get to raise and in a world that's better, and that all of that is necessary in order to do that. And that many in my family would benefit from the work and the hardships that I was going through at that time, because being the oldest, I, saw a lot of things I shouldn't have, right? I experienced, I take care of my brother and my sister and, my friends, I felt like also protecting. But it really made me a better now probation officer, trustee at a school district, very similar to a community where I grew up.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, so I'm just going to say, this is real with reals. So I'm just going to say it, okay? So in our communities, a lot of times, law enforcement, corrections officers, they're seen as like, hey, y'all haven't treated us right, right? So what do you say to people like, wait, you're this great community leader and you're working for the system, like, but you're doing it in a particular kind of way.
That's right.
So what do you say?
So for me, I went in to dismantle what was put in place years ago, right? Hundreds of years ago. The system was put in place to put us behind bars, to, put us behind handcuffs. And so for me, it's dismantling that.
Mm.
And eventually, which kind of, along with my journey and being a mom, but also as a probation officer, seeing how our children we've failed our children in our communities over and over. When youth come in to my caseload and they have a, thick list of abuse that's happened to them, and we as adults send them back, right, to the same person, of course, we're going to grow up angry. Now, I'm not saying it's okay for them to commit crimes. However, what are we doing as adults for our children? And so, for me, I look forward to the day where there's no more crime happening, therefore, no more children behind bars, because we as adults have given our children what they need early on, our families, there's no more poverty. So it's helped me through my journey to get to where I'm at, to better be a leader in my community. And then, it's also seeing the root cause, right? Why do children commit crimes? Why, is there so much crime? Then connecting the dots and the poverty levels and how that affects a family, and, parents working 2-3 jobs, and how are we, if a child can't focus in school, right? If they've seen fighting all day, how do they go back and learn about 2+2 and spell words that, like, they're barely figuring out how they're going to survive? So how can we be leaders where, yes, we want to make sure that everybody is thriving. And so where are we missing? We can't just expect high test scores, right? I can't just expect our superintendent to, bring in and make sure all of our scores are up, or all of our teachers, are happy. We got to look at the root causes. Where are we failing? And then making sure that we change that. And how, as a leader, am I supporting that as well?
So give me an example. Like, you got a young person that's got a long criminal record, right? They've been beating people up. They've been stealing. They've been doing that. They've been, I mean, that was me. That was me at, 15. By 15, I had, three, uh, 3 felonies, right? I was in juvie 3 times by 16. And so then I meet my probation officer, right? And it's like, you're not going to help me, right? You're not going to help me. It wasn't until, like, I learned to help myself and got my mentors that helped me, that then I started listening to my probation officer. And it was that last probation officer I remember very vividly. Like, I had violated probation, and then she was like, yeah, you went and, yeah, I don't know. I forget the details, but it had to do with me, being drunk or something, and got in trouble and violated probation for drinking. And she's like, you violated probation. She goes, but I see that you're starting to do better in school, and you're talking about college. She's like, who taught you about college? And I was like, oh, like, my mentors, because I had mentors as well, and they're the ones that taught me how to mentor students. And she's like, are you serious? And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna apply. Can I please get another, like, chance? She was just like, all right, but I better not, I better not see you back here again. And that's the moment where I was like, okay, I know I'm on my last thread here. Hey, I'm getting ready to apply to college. I just need to do it. But what would be your example of, like, the way you do things differently? Because you say that system was set up to further keep people in their place, right? I was like, oh, you all don't know better, so we're just gonna keep you here, whether it's locked up or on probation. But, like, how do you on a day-to-day basis support these individuals that are, like, really needing the tools to be able to build a better life for themselves and their families.
I think first of all is being authentic,
Mm.
sharing my story and being vulnerable. Some of my coworkers are like, "Don't tell them about your personal life." It's like keep it separate, and you become this like separate. I have a badge and my handcuffs and my bulletproof vest, and you're not connecting with youth. And so for me is telling them the story, like how I grew up, and what really motivated me to be a probation officer, and if I wanted to make money, I'd be in another field.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Yep.
about that. It was about making a difference and connecting. And so being vulnerable and authentic, and then also knowing that I don't need to have all the answers, that I don't need to come in and, you need to listen to me and how to be strategic. Sometimes, it's a mentor, right, that I have a connection with or that I have a relationship that can connect with that youth better and might hear some of the things, I'm trying to tell them, maybe actually hear it from somebody else. And so learning how to do that too. And I think also as a leader in the community, also learning again, and you said it, right? You didn't have to be the voice or the one to be on the mic. We can step back sometimes and we can have outcomes without us having to be the one, but strategically coordinating with others to make that
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah, one of my other guests, Jesus Vera, was talking about sort of the stages of development. And he says, eventually you shift, when you get older, you shift into a stage of legacy. Like, what legacy? By the way, it's around our stage of development or age. We're like, what legacy am I going to leave behind? So I wanted to ask you, like, what now that you're here, right?
Yeah.
You've done so much for communities. You've helped so many people. You made an impact, right, in your local community, in the San Francisco Bay Area. Like, what's your definition of like legacy, in terms of what, like we talk about 7 generations, right? Like what you're gonna leave behind.
So yeah, definitely what I'm doing now where that's going to leave that impact beyond my physical existence. And so I see myself as like a tree, like it's strong rooted, the roots that keep feeding and connecting to other roots and other trees and like feeding each other. And then, the trunk, itself and the leaves growing, the fruit that'll give the shade. You see trees that are thousands of years old, right? And it's like they continue to give that shade to others and the oxygen. I learned something just the other day about 30,000 plus cells in each of us, right? Like when we breathe in, that oxygen that we take in.
That's right.
And then out, like that tree. And so knowing that, I may never meet the people that will be able to benefit from that I'll leave. That's what I think of, the legacy. And I think of those things that have helped, we talked about remembering, right? Help me remember. I want to be able to leave something to help others remember and just come back to their essence. And so like, co-founding Noshli right now, because I'm like, there's nothing like that. We got together and we made this happen, but there's not, people come to us, it's like, how do I get more of that? Or,
Tell me about Nochli.
So Noshli, again, came from that. My husband and I were blessed and grateful that we were able to grow up with, people like you, elders, olders that exposed us and brought us back to our ceremonial, our indigenous ways, our ways, right? I heard another brother talked about the AI, original AI, right? Our ancestral intelligence.
Original AI. Shout out to
original AI.
Dr. Cesar Cruz that
Yes.
showed up to a conference recently we were at and
Yeah.
that I organized actually
Yeah.
for education leaders. And he kept saying, hey, the original AI,
Original AI.
ancestral intelligence.
Yes. Yeah. And so, at least in the Bay Area, my husband and I are called in to do these grounding ceremonies, right? And so people check off lists like, can you come and perform a land acknowledgement? And then we get to, do a little bit of schooling. It's like we don't come and do land acknowledgements. We do grounding ceremonies. And in that, we acknowledge the land upon which we're in. And so we realize that not a lot of people have access to that, and people come up to us and are like, my, I got the chills, or, I remember coming back again to being at the Alcatraz, right? When you took me and having that. And I had exposure to that. Not everybody does. And so my husband and I were like, we need to come together, and we're doing it already, right? But we learn about aromatherapy and all these things where others are taking on our ways and making money off it, and that's not how we were taught, right? Our elders, remembering Maestro Solocoa, les voy a enseñar, but this is not something you're going to charge for, right? And so it's that, and then knowing that we get to pay our bills. So how do we do it in a way that's and we're still working through that and letting Spirit guide us, where we're not making money. We're bringing these ways, and not like others that don't understand our ways and wouldn't understand that, or like charging per seat at a ceremony. It's like no. We don't. We need to make sure that everybody has access. It's not just those with money, right? That's brought back to our children, that our children are proud of who they are. So Noshli is kind of like the work that we've been doing, but just putting it, and Noshli is...
What does it stand for?
And the actual Noshli is the word for the tuna and our cactus, right? And our nopal. And so, you hear, tiene nopal en la frente. It's like, for me, it's the opposite. It's so proud. Like, I get to show up who I am with my roots everywhere. Like, and so Noshli is the tuna, the fruit.
Noshli.
Again, the fruit of the nopal. And then giving fruit and making sure that it's spread and that this is ours, right? It's not just Corina and Gerardo's or the elder I met the other day or the one that ran the ceremony. This is your way, right?
Nochli, tuna, cactus, desert. Isn't it a desert pear in English? What do they call it?
I think so. A prickly pear. That's what I have heard. Yeah, prickly pear. Yeah, the prickly pear. Noshli. And then we have, we're expanding now Yari, which is the heart in Wirarica, and like, again, is remembering who we are and bringing our heart, coming back to our heart.
We underestimate the power of reconnecting with the roots you've been torn apart from. And again, I just can't emphasize how important it is for us to have a grounding of where we come from, especially in such a divided society. It's like, I think part of the reason we're so divided is that people are lost. People don't not only remember where they come from, all groups, right? But also, people don't, when tragedy hits, when crisis hits, we don't have any strategies for grounding ourselves, for regulating, self-regulating, but most importantly, for collective healing. We got a fire that burnt down our community. Who do we turn to? Where do we go? What grounds us? And for me, it's very important that people feel that they get their grounding in whatever way they discover. But some people are lost. They don't have any ways of grounding. And so to have indigenous knowledge, indigenous ways teaching us how to ground ourselves, it's a very important. I know that's what brought me to where I am today. I have a chapter in my book on becoming this Aztec dancer, ancient tradition is called. And just knowing, like, my uncle was murdered in front of me, and my mom was standing next to me. He was in the middle, kind of like our distance, you and I right now, very close distance. And then he was in the middle, and some guy just came, shot him in the head, family party, and little kids saw in the family, and we didn't know where to turn to. But I was blessed at the time. I just started and getting into the Aztec dance tradition, and I was just starting college, by the way, when all this happened. And I went to the circle, I remember, and they had the smoke burning in the middle, the incense, the copal burning, and I brought all my little cousins that seen the tragedy with me. We were all traumatized, right? Crying for days and days, and I'm like, and I threw them in that Tic Tac van. By the way, that Tic Tac van belonged to my uncle Tito, and he used it for work, and I would borrow it from him. It was like a 1979 Dodge, and I would throw all the kids in the hood. They're all my little cousins and their friends in the van, and we would go to the Aztec dance circle, and there was feathers there, and they taught us what a feather meant as a prayer, and it was, you know, the smoke and people dancing so beautifully, and we were all just like, all like, on edge, and then it calmed us down.
Mhm.
And then people, what's beautiful about the circle is that everyone goes around and gets to talk,
Mhm.
literally a talking stick. And then my little cousin, the littlest one at the time, like 6 year olds, was like, sharing how they feel. And then the little older one, and then the tons of teenagers, and then my brother, my sister, and then me, and just realizing like, oh, thank you, you just gave my family an outlet and a space, and the healing collectively that tradition has provided for my family. That's what I consider legacy, right? That's the legacy of our ancestors who prayed that this moment would happen, that we'd have this tool still 7 generations ago, and here we are, we have it. And then that work that you continue to pursue.
And then remembering too that it doesn't have to be like, not everybody has access. That's beautiful, but not everybody has access to a Nastic dancing group. They want to, right? Even though now they're everywhere. So, look them up and come. Doors open. But also, my husband and I remind folks like, you could just grab that water, your drink of water, and reconnecting yourself to Mother Earth, right? Going under the sun, going outside and just breathing in that air, bringing in that oxygen again to those 30 plus cells. And so, as simple as just life itself, right? The 4 elements of life. And sometimes, if we don't have access, because it's like, well, I don't have an elder or I don't have a circle, just that simple. Grabbing your drink of water, grounding yourself in Mother Earth, taking that drink under the sun and breathing in that air. It doesn't have to look fancy, right?
Yeah. Day-to-day practices of grounding are so important. And really, regardless of where you get them from, but having options in terms of, okay, do I respectfully borrow from where my people come from? Or maybe I don't really know where my people come from yet. So do I respectfully borrow then from other traditions where I learn to do it in the right way?
Yeah. And I do have to talk about alcoholism, right? It really affected my family, continues to, right? And for me, connecting the dots, it was like, oh, the colonizers brought alcohol for us to drown, our people were dying, our women were getting raped. All those things. And so for me, I knew I had to put that away. So my husband and I live a sober lifestyle for 9 years now together. And people are like, oh my God, and you still have fun? What's wrong? With you guys, you're not going to drink. I was even told, is he controlling you? And it's like, it's crazy. And it's like, no, we're just choosing right now, not forever and maybe forever, but just for today, we're choosing not to, because I know how it's affected my family and continues to. Again, the traumas that, my family members have experienced because of alcohol, I can't help but to think of those. And it's like, well, why would I bring that, continue that, knowing now.
Yeah. So growing up, you were seeing the impact of alcohol.
I'm still seeing the impact of alcohol in my family.
Yeah. That is a heavy sort of experience, right? To know that a lot of the issues that take place are from the alcohol.
And then in ceremonias, right? It's like, oh, we sit with the fire, we sit with, in a lodge or in a teepee, and stripping us off like layer by layer. It's kind of like the onion, right? And just when I thought like, oh, I'm healed, here we go in life. And it's like, oh, something else, another layer like the onion. And again, bringing us closer to remembering who our essence is. And then being able to do that for others. When I came into Alum Rock Elementary School District as a trustee, one of the first things I did, one, is ended our contracts with the San Jose Police Department. People are like, don't do that, because they want to, support you in your next, elected official when you run for them. Like, I'm not here for that. I'm here to support the children and families that I'm here to represent. And then another huge one, and not by myself, with community, right? bringing in ethnic studies. So we're also one of the first districts in California to bring that in formally. And not just a piece of paper that's cute that I, said I and voted on, but how do we hire somebody, right? We don't just say we're going to do it or read off of a resolution, but where's our money, our funding going to? So we hired somebody to ensure that that was implemented in our district. And again, as a leader, how am I bringing that into the work that I'm doing? And it's not just on the weekend, right? Weekend warrior or whatever. Every day, how am I able to come back? Even when I walk with my bracelet, oh my God, that's so pretty. And I'm able to share a little bit. And they're like, me too. Or I think my grandfather was. Or
Wow. Wow. That's powerful. Let's talk a little bit about now your role as a policymaker, right? And you talked about what contracts and when, right? And that's important. What was the logic behind sort of saying, okay, you know what? I'm a probation officer, but I know that in schools, right, to have where do you place law enforcement? And that's a big question out there in terms of safety,
right.
right? In school, in classrooms, outside. And you had that debate, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
People are like, are you sure you're a PO? Like, yeah, but we don't need a police officer dealing with, a kid in first grade who poked another kid because that's what he's seen. He's just mad and that's how he expresses his anger. We need somebody to teach him that's not the way to express your anger. We don't need him being marked, So I'm a trustee over Union Elementary School District. So that's 0. We started our early learning center. So age 0, right? Newborn to 8th grade. Now at the high school level, maybe I'll have a conversation about that and entertain, but I'm not there. I'm representing a Union Elementary School District. And in kinder, first grade, in the elementary, we don't need police officers. We need more social emotional staff helping our children learn about choices and consequences so that when they're teenagers, they're not doing some of the things maybe they've been raised to say, oh, that's normal. You just do that.
Yeah.
Or you just treat a girl like that. That's what I've seen my uncle do. Or,
Yeah. And then how about ethnic studies? How that? So we've been really this whole hour been talking about ethnic studies, really, like, particularly in the case of our conversation today, indigeneity, or as one of the incredible educators recently, we were at a conference where she talked about re-indigenizing, right? How has ethnic studies impacted kids in their
So for me, I know what learning about who I was did for me, right? That I can go into any room and have a voice because I have all my ancestors speaking through me. And so, for me, it was important that children learn about who they are growing up. There's nobody that can tell you you're dumb. What you have to say is not important. And so not just learning about themselves, but when you learn about others as well through ethnic studies, right? Not just the paragraph that somebody chose to put in, but, who is around you and what traditions. You learn that we're more similar than not. And all the cultures around the world. You learn that, they also pray. There's incense that might be called different. There's circles. We learn the similarities. And I think when we don't have that, we are very separate. Like you're over there, it's us versus them versus a we, and respecting one another's traditions and culture.
Yeah.
So for me, it was important to bring that in. For sure, 2 + 2 and, the spelling, English, all of those things are important, absolutely. But when your root and your base is learning and knowing who you are and then respecting others, then you're more like, oh yeah, I'm in this classroom and we're going to grow up together and we're going to learn together. And I'm not going to join a gang, right? Again, because it's that sense of community. When I sat going back to the funeral, I was like, why are we doing this? And at the same time, I know why. Because this is what we grew up with. This is what we identify with. So when our children have that, it's important. For me, it was like, how do I make sure every child here is feeling heard, is feeling connected? And it's, through things like ethnic studies. And then making sure they're not criminalizing children already, right? Like, oh, Johnny, you have Johnny? Oh, yeah, I have the older brother. He's going to be already marking them when they're little, right?
Yeah.
No, every child, everybody has our own essence, and children do too.
That's so powerful that at age 13, you were already, I know you have a sociology degree, but at age 13, you were already a sociologist. You were like, oh, I know why we're here. My best buddy passes away, and it's because we've normalized this. Like, and this is not that, like, this shouldn't be the norm.
Mhm.
And your whole career, you've been like pushing against that idea that alcoholism, violence, gangs, shouldn't be the norm. That we gotta help people heal through trauma in other ways besides these very negative kind of ways. That's powerful. I want to just ask you a little bit, like, because it's mind boggling for me, right? To have sort of this full circle moment. We've gone kind of from student and mentor to allies, working for our communities and education systems. So, what does this full circle moment feel like for you?
Mm. For me, it's like uh, being exactly where Creator sent me on this earth to be, like on that
Mm,
path. Um, and listening, right, to the whispers of spirit. And like my ancestors prayed for me to be here. And I feel like I'm a living ancestor. I'm living the dreams of those before me. And then also thinking of the impact that I'm leaving, but in the present. Um, and so just being full circle, even here with you, right? Like no accidents. Like we
mm,
connected, we went off, we did our thing, but here we are still uh, in this, 40 years of age. I don't know, midway through maybe. Who knows, más o menos. Um, but then also, like I had, for example, you and other elders, where it's like made it possible for me to see myself walk through some of these doors, like college. Then how do I also get to be that, right?
yeah.
Full circle here with you, that you help me see that for myself, and then how do I get to be that for others too?
Mm,
And then continuing that, and that others get to see, well, if she did it right, I can too. Because I mean, as women, we hear like first I was told I wasn't gonna be a PO was one thing, but then as a woman, that's a whole other list. Oh, you'll never be able to. And then even now as a trustee, trying to be silenced and all those things, it's like, no, you can. You have a voice, you have an essence, and you're needed. And
yeah.
wherever anybody that's listening, right? Or it's like maybe sometimes we second guess ourselves. It's like, no, no, no. Take a deep breath. You're needed. Your voice is needed. Nobody can bring the lens and the experience that you have to whatever space it is, whatever dreams you have. You deserve to be there.
What do you tell yourself when you're in those spaces where people are trying to belittle you because you're a woman or because of the community you come from? And you're at the table and you know they're belittling you. Like, how do you hype yourself up? What are you telling yourself?
So in my space, I'm in public a lot, right? So I know that I'm the example. And, I think of Michelle Obama, right? When they go low, you go high, or whatever
Hmm.
the saying is. And so for me, I get to remind myself, like, I was voted in by the people.
Mm.
Like, this person who's belittling me at the time or trying to put me down has no say. The people voted for me to be there and to be their voice. So how am I going to best use that? In public, it'll be different than on one-on-one. So in public, I make sure that hate is not the last word.
Mm.
And I do my best to be as respectful as I can in the moment, but also make sure that the voice and the message um, is put out in a clear way. I don't know if this makes any sense, but again, I think as simple as that, hate and belittling is not the last word.
Mm.
Because even in the moment, I might not be able to go back and forth because the president might have ended, the conversation at the time. But there's another opportunity, and there's another item we're gonna, deal with, and it's the same type of behavior. Unfortunately, by some of these people who go around belittling, again, it's not them. It's the anger and pain that they haven't been able to process. So I get to also remember that.
Oh yeah. So when someone's, this is an important point
Yeah.
because you know you run into someone at the grocery store or when you're driving, they're road raging, grocery store, they tell you off at work, in your profession, they're trying to belittle you. And you said it. Oh, I feel for you because you haven't processed your trauma, anger, negativity, feeling that you're always a victim. I'm not going to let that mess with my day and mess with my mission. So that work that you do, is crucial because you're so grounded now that like you realize like, oh, we have some work to do with you. And I'm not gonna take what you said personal, even though it was directly personal.
Mm.
And that kind of demeanor I think is important for everyone to take on because so how many times we've been out there where someone, you're walking your path and someone's like pushes you off the path and you're like, okay, and you just jump off the path in order to let this person who's dysregulated dysregulate you.
Mm.
And I think that's the number one lesson I kind of end up teaching young people when I work with them. Like, hey, where are you at in terms of like having the stability not to let others manipulate you, even if it means kind of trying to push your pride or your boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And easier said than done, right?
Mhm.
I mean, I'm human, and there's moments where it's like, oh, but then taking the moment of like taking a step back, and then addressing. And so on the dais, it looks different than in person
Mm.
because I've had pulled some of my colleagues aside and said, hey, what is that microaggression about? For the past 3 months, you're attacking me over everything, and it's like, well, back months ago you did this, and it's like, do me a favor and pull me aside. If you're too upset that day, maybe within that week, let's talk about it, right? I had no idea. And, now this person is angry every time they see me. It's like, and also a boundary as a woman, because I feel, or a human being, but I just feel as women, we get to do that often. Moving forward, what I need is respect
Mm.
and putting the boundaries and also ensuring that, they understand that. And maybe they don't have women around them that, again, the culture, this way that we grow up, maybe they haven't had anybody stop them and say, hey, you know what? That doesn't feel good. That's not okay. And moving forward, this is the way that I need you to address me if I ever get you upset, because I'm going to do that again. This person was upset that I was asking questions in the meeting. I'm like, I'm going to keep asking questions. Like, that's my job
Yeah.
as a trustee, to make sure that I have all the information I need to make the appropriate votes. And we move this district forward for everyone, not just for a few, but for everyone.
Mm. Corina, it's been a wonderful, wonderful time talking with you today. Thank you for sharing some incredible wisdom and insight. I do have a couple more questions, and this is the time I like to call it Real with Rios. And the first question about sort of, you know, where you're at in life is if you weren't doing all those great things of being a leader out in the community, of reconnecting people to their roots, of raising a family, um, what would you be doing right now just for the joy of it?
I think just being, like, I think of the ocean or the water, nature, also trees, just being out, not having to clock in to a job, and clock out and like be there and, make sure that the stats, right, the numbers look good, or um, just be myself and like not have to fall into a box, or make sure that, I'm doing anything because to get it, whether it's a paycheck or, you know, uh, numbers or time, that I could just be with nature, be with people without a time frame. Yeah,
Okay, out in nature, huh?
out in
For
nature,
joy. That's amazing.
being my true essence, just
Yeah.
connecting heart to heart without time. Like, I think of ceremony, like tiempo no tiempo. There's no like time constraint. Like the next thing.
Tiempo no tiempo. Time no time. What is that supposed to teach
So
you?
tiempo no tiempo, people say, how long is the ceremony going to be? And it's like, there's not a set time, right? We start and then we let spirit kind of guide. And there's not like a hardcore, set. It's going to end at, 1 or whatever time, we just let spirit kind of take it to as long as it needs to be, as short as it needs to be.
Is that why when my family comes over and the party's over, they're still there for
Yeah, it's
hours and hours?
a cultural thing.
Oh, thanks for visiting me. Can
Tiempo
you
no
go home now?
tiempo.
They're like, no, we're staying. Okay, I'm going to bed, y'all.
I love
Hang out.
that. And that's how we are, right? Our doors are always open to,
Yeah.
familia and, yeah, like I had a cousin say, I'm showing up, and it's like, oh yeah. And I love it, right? It's
Yeah.
like, here's a code. I'm not going to be there, but go in. Will you be there when I get back? Maybe, maybe not, but it's our culture, like tiempo no tiempo. So for me, the jobs and like taking the kids to school and making sure they, know all their ABCs or it's just, you have to like mark things. And so it's like tiempo no tiempo is just letting spirit kind of take time.
So you live more of that life
Yeah.
if you could.
Yes.
That's incredible. Yeah, the last 2 weekends I had incredible with my cousin and then my nephew, and same thing came over. I'm like, I got to hang out with them, but I was so busy. But then here's the code, same thing, hang out, and then when I come by, we'll hang out, and my nephew brought another friend, and then I was like, all right, he can sleep right there, and more friends, and but that's the open door that we have as you say, as a culture, as a community. All right, and then final question. So
Okay.
I like fixing things.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since I was a little kid, I would find like a broken appliance, a old TV, and I've tried to fix it. Most of the time, I failed, by the way. But I also like fixing cars, and my kids and I have been working on this old car, old Camaro. We've been fixing for a while. Um, and I have a question for you: Is if you could fix anything in your life right now, what would you fix?
Mm. Ah, that question might get me in trouble, but I think I grew up thinking like I had to fix men, like my partners throughout life. And then when I learned like actually I'm not gonna fix it, it's just again the concept of just helping folks remember. In Tlocanahuaque, all of those people in my life had to be in my life in order for me to be exactly where I'm at right now, with all the blessings that I have. However, it's not my job to fix. So that's what comes to my mind. It's not my job to fix others. What it is just, again, allowing folks to remember and the healing. So I know I didn't like answer your question directly, but I think fixing comes with a lot of responsibility. Like it's on me. Like I'm the one that's going to like fix this person, where it's like, it's not really me. Even every youth that comes in my life, or the thousands of students that I'm responsible for. Like I don't get to fix a problem, but I get to help bring solutions and like a space for healing, for remembering, for again knowing that there's something more than just what we're doing. Sometimes we put ourselves in boxes, curriculum or Common Core or whatever it is. It's not my job to fix it. It's my job to bring like solutions and then help whether it's a person or systems, remember why we're there.
Yeah. So no, this is a good answer. The answer in my ears is you're fixing what you're trying to fix, what you would fix, and you've been doing it, is you're fixing the idea that I have to fix everyone else's problems when the truth is that we just got to provide them the resources, the tools, the opportunity to fix their own problems. And if they can't, it really doesn't kind of lean back on us because we're trying our best to support people, whether it's interpersonally or people in the community we're trying to help, trying to support them
And
in
dismantle
fixing.
systems that aren't there to fix, right?
Yeah.
There are systems put in place not for people like you and I, people of color to succeed. They were put for the opposite. And so dismantling that. So it's not fixing. It's like also sometimes like doing away with the old thoughts, right?
Yeah.
Old ways of like how things have been done.
Yeah.
And bringing in a new way. Because I think of like thousands of years, things were done differently than we're doing now. What we're doing now can't live on forever.
Yeah.
We get to shift and we get to do things differently for the next generations.
Yeah.
And what does that look like? And we get to create that here.
Yeah. So sometimes it's not about fixing, but it's about starting from scratch.
Reimagining too.
Imagine. That's incredible. Well, Corina Herrera-Loera, thank you for sharing your heart, your leadership, and your memories. It's been wonderful to have you. You remind us that mentorship plants seeds we may not see grow, but when they bloom, they change the world. To our listeners, never underestimate who's watching you, who's supporting you, or how far your words will echo. Sometimes someone's trying to help you out, and you don't even realize it, right? You might not realize that when you reach out and try to help someone, maybe they won't even tell you that you had an impact on them until 10, 20 years later. This is Sueños to Success. Until next time, I'm Dr. Victor Rios. Take care, everyone.